Reddit, what's your strangest one-night stand? Possibly NFSW. A few months ago a friend of mine calls me up out of the blue around 10 p.m. I was already getting ready for bed watching a movie on my couch and eating some noodles. First thing he says when he gets me on the phone is, "Hey dude, I'm coming to town with these two strippers, it's one of their birthdays and she just broke up with her BF, want to go to a bar with us." It takes me a minute to process everything he has just told me, and when I do I agree. 30 minutes later he picks me up with the two strippers and we head out to a local bar where they pay for everything, and I do mean everything. We must have ran a tab in excess of $150. We leave that place around midnight and go to a house party at another friend's house. Now the party we went to was Cowboys and Indians themed and the four of us were dressed up real nice, so we stuck out like sore thumbs. We get there, one of the strippers grabs my hand, we go to her car, the one we were riding around in. She tells me to go back to my place, so I do. Felt bad about leaving my friend there, but he made his way back to his house somehow. She spends the night at my place. I wake up in the morning as she's putting on her clothes again. And then this is where it gets real. WTF, she hands me $50, kisses me, leaves a note with her email address and leaves. To this day I have no clue why she gave me the money. TL, Dr. Hook up with a stripper randomly that my friend brings to my house, she gives me money after. Okay, screw the throwaways, I've been telling this story slightly altered for years now, but for you Reddit, the real story. So back 99 I took a trip down to New York City with my girlfriend's jackass roommate, we'll call him Phil. I had never been to NYC and he had a place to crash with his grandmother in Jersey. He was offering a place to stay, so I sucked up my dislike for him and party on. Being young bucks and full of nonsense, he scored some crappy shake at the very first stop past the border, and thus the tone was set for the rest of the long weekend. We crashed out the first night, but the second night we proceeded to paint the town red. We started by having many shots in one of the bars at the former World Trade Center, then hopped a cab and went to Greenwich Village. He had a fantastic idea: when in Rome cult 45. After knocking those back, we're pretty pickled, and walked into some random cozy bar with about 8 people in it. I spot 2 girls sitting at a table together, tell Phil to chat them up, and seconds later I'm sitting in the empty chair learning their names. Phil is tanked at this point, and I'm barely holding on myself, but apparently I remain polite and fairly composed. Phil does not. He goes around to everyone in the bar and starts pissing people off. Later, I get a tap on the shoulder. It's the bouncer. He has a problem. He's already thrown Phil out once, and he's walked right back in. Maybe I could talk to him? Fuck people who say New Yorkers aren't nice. Maybe when they're busy they'll push you to the ground and walk across your back if you're too slow. But when they aren't working, they are awesome, kind and patient. Anyway. So I walk up to Phil and explain what's going down. He's heading home, and I'm not. I ask him how he's getting home. He explains how he'll get to Jersey where his grandmother's house is. I watch him walk down the block, and I return to my 2 lovelies. I better explain something real quick. At the time my girlfriend and I were sort of finished. We were friends, but we hadn't had sex in months, and we had already had the open relationship talk. We sort of went from girlfriend-boyfriend to brother-sister. I'm still close with her. Anyway, I sit down in my seat and the bouncer puts a beer in front of me. "Thanks," he says. I take this as his blessing and leave with the 2 girls. One had a boyfriend, and despite my dubious moral fiber, I ain't programmed to mess with people's relationships. The other girl was a different story, too young to drink, she was old enough to know better. We get back to where the hell are we? I had no idea. Whatever. We smoked a J through a toilet paper roll stuffed with dryer sheets. It works, the unattached lasts, and I start messing around. When I manually head downstairs I notice she's very tight. More so than anyone else I had ever been with. As a matter of fact, it was like my first oh crap, a virgin. Later on she nervously admitted what I suspected, and said that she wanted to have sex. Wait. No. Yes. No. Yes. No. Yes. No. Exasperated, I explain that there's no pressure. I'm only in town for one night, I'm from another country, and we'd probably never see each other again. So I would fully understand if she didn't want her first time to be with a drunk Canadian who she'd likely never see again. Okay, she wanted to. No wait, no, yes, I was done. It was closing in on 6 a.m, I was stoned, drunk and exhausted. I told her we'd talk about it in the morning and pass out. So far not so bad, right? This is where it all goes wrong. I get up, not wake up, but get up, and I start sleepwalking. I crash around the room in a daze, until I finally find what I'm looking for, the toilet. It was mid-dump that I woke up. I had not found a toilet. I found a textbook. Perhaps it was a subconscious political statement. I don't know. What I do know is that my first lucid thought is to wake her up, but I may have jumped the gun because I still didn't know what had just happened to me. If you've ever been woken up sleepwalking, it is really confusing. I had a reason I was doing this, it's obvious, I can't remember, it's like waking from a very real dream. Well, anyway, like any normal well-adjusted person, She got really nervous, and after offering to call the hospital, or psychiatrist, she finally offers me money to go to a hotel, and GTFO. Finally she flatly says you have to leave. Humiliated, hungover, unable to explain, and with an unwashed butt I admit defeat. Okay. Off I go into the blazing hot day, and where the hell am I? I stand around bewildered for a while, looking for a sign or something, when I find it the wrought iron fence in front of me says Bronx Zoo. I'm in the fucking Bronx. I've done my rap homework, I know that this isn't a good place to hang around as a tourist. Blindly picking a direction, I walk until I find a subway, I blindly pick a direction, and I must have blown all my bad luck because good luck. I'm heading to Central Station. When I finally get there I look up at the board with all the buses and come to the realization that I have no fucking clue which bus will take me to Phil's grandmother's house where a change of clothes and a shower await. As I stand there letting it all sink in, the most unbelievable part of all of this happens. Wilfred. You motherfucker. It's Phil. Holy sweet hell, why in God's name is he even here? He marches right up to me, and first thing he says, man, you stink. DNR, I party down in NYC, pick up a virgin, shit on a textbook, find my bus back to my clothes through a coincidence that I wouldn't believe if it didn't happen to me. The one I only remember a small 5 seconds frame of. Come out of blackout standing in an alley making out with an overweight lady with my junk hanging out, blackout again. Wake with my upper leg muscles aching, still STD free. Haven't been that drunk since. I met a girl in a bar one night. We went back to her place to fuck, and she gave me roadhead. She was driving. Obviously, not while we were moving, but every red light. I went to a convention. A big nerd convention, won't say which to protect someone. 3 weeks before going to this convention I started watching a popular web series and developed a crush on one of the actors. Anyhow, this actor was a guest at this convention, and long story short I ended up chatting with him at the hotel bar after a long convention day. A weirdo fan of the series was trying to flirt with him and he kept putting his arm around me and whispering help me. So I would step in front of him and block her out of the way while we talked. It was really fun actually. We went back to his room and got it on. It was a nice time, and I didn't even mention that I had a huge crush on him on the show. Note, it's extremely awkward peeling off a nerdy costume before you bang someone, and it's even more awkward having to walk of shame the next morning in it. Seriously, if you've ever had to walk a few blocks to your hotel at 7 AM in a corset and boots while the working people of the city bustle by you with their briefcases and coffee, you will learn the true meaning of not a single fuck was given that day. Peace, he gave me his number, but I'm not cray-cray so I don't contact him unless he does first. I hear he has a lot of annoying fangirls. DL, doctor, hooked up with internet celeb I'd been crushing on. I met a girl at a cafe, who was carrying a toothbrush around. I asked her why, and she said something about wanting to make sure she had good oral hygiene wherever she went. Then we started talking about giraffes and how they weren't trustworthy. Then we went back to her place and had sex. One time, after a severe blackout, I woke up in a random girl's bed. The girl laying next to me is easy pushing 300 pounds. I'm not really alarmed since I can't even remember when I started drinking. I go to sit up and my wrist is caught on something. I look over to see my grandfather's watch stuck in her hair. It was bad too, like some Boy Scout elf had worked his evil magic. Being faced with the dilemma of waking the girl or giving up the watch, I immediately adopted a new life motto. Fuck the watch. Not quite a one-night stand as you'll see, but it's still my best hookup story. I was at a party and somehow ended up making out with this girl within 30 seconds of meeting her. Not sure how it happened, but I suspect I was drunk. I took her back to her place, figured out her name based on pictures I saw on her wall, and we continued making out. Just as we're about to start dancing the horizontal monster mash, her roommate bursts in the room, tripping balls. Turns out she smoked some bad shit and the paramedics were on the way. Cock blocked by the emergency personnel, those honorable bastards. Phew. Okay. Halloween last year, I was more stressed out than usual and had gone a long time without getting any, so I was determined to get some by whatever standards necessary, that were consensual, of course. At the beginning of the night, I began drinking heavily, but felt fine after a while. Pretty comfortably drunk. Which means, of course, I thought, oh man, I can drink even more and feel even better. The night was in snippets for a while after that. Now, I'm no small guy, I'm around 6 tall and around 200 pounds, but after hitting on almost every single girl at this party, I find myself with a girl who is even bigger than me. I have an illustration handy, in which I'm Earth, not quite to scale. And at that point, I was too shit-faced to care, so we brought it back to her place. Now, when you're boning a larger girl, you have to understand there are certain limitations. You see, while the distribution of fat in a woman usually centers around the waist and hips, it can't all go there. That said, there was a pretty decent barrier between me and my drunken goal. Not to mention the sheer size of this girl was a factor. You know how the Death Star was the size of a moon, but the vent Luke had to shoot into was only about 2 meters? Yeah. Needless to say, after hours of trying, It just wasn't happening. By that point, she'd fallen asleep, but more importantly, I'd sobered up enough to realize what I was doing, however not enough to have very fine motor skills. I decided I would hate myself less if I just got the fuck out of there. So, I did my best to get dressed as quietly as I could. By the grace of God, she was out. I'd gotten my pants, socks and underwear on with relatively few problems, but for the life of me, I couldn't find the shirt I was wearing under my modest costume. Ordinarily, I would have booked it anyways, but damn it, that's one of my favorite shirts. I pretty much trashed her entire room trying to find it. I overturned piles of neatly organized things, threw all her covers on the floor to see if it was on the bed, and at one point tripped over something, put out my hand to lean against her closet, but put too much weight on the door and knocked it off its hinges. Eventually I found my shirt and got the hell out of there. I saw her again a couple of weeks later, eyes at my feet, taking a quick pace. I met this guy at a club, he was pretty hot. We started flirting and he bought me a few drinks. Next thing we were making out in a booth in the corner. We decided to go back to my place, because it was heaps closer to the club than his. We got a taxi home. We were making out in the taxi. Finally get home, go straight upstairs to my room and we banged. The sex was normal, and I fell asleep. I woke up in the middle of the night and I realized the bed was kind of wet. I shined a light from my iPhone onto the sheets and see this massive fucking puddle of piss under him, that was seeping into the bed towards me. I didn't know what to do. I decided to wake him up and just be like, I think you wet the bed. He totally denies it. He said it was water that he spilled, it was not water, and then falls back asleep in a pool of his own urine. I got up, had a shower and went to sleep on the couch. When I woke up he was gone. I ended up checking out my mattress and buying a new one. And I saw that guy out again at the same club about a month later, told him he owed me $400 for a new mattress. He didn't say anything and left not long after, never to be seen again. My strangest was through Craigslist, surprise, where these two guys who seemed pretty hot wanted a threesome. So we meet up at their house, and it's a MC mansion in a nice neighborhood by the ocean. I'm like, "Fivus." But when we go inside, there's a really old man who greets us. I'm hoping to God that he's just their elderly grandpa they're taking care of, but nope. We go up to the bedroom, and I'm getting ready to make an excuse and bolt the fuck out of there, because there's no way I'm getting conned into sex with a leathery centenarian. But he just sits back and watches. Creepy, but I can deal with it. Suddenly during sexy time I feel a hand stroking my foot. I look up, as the old guy slowly inserts my toes into his gummy mouth, his dentures apparently removed while sneakily in the shadows. It was the scariest feeling ever. Like my leg was sliding into a gaping, slimy, fleshy abyss. The horror. He winks and gives me a toothless smile. But I put my brave face on, and try to deny his gummy advances. Having consumed mushrooms, and now feeling kind of paranoid and defiled, I started to freak out. The tipping point was when the two guys I had intended to sleep with, snuck out of the room, and the old guy started gumming his way up my thighs, completely consumed with slippery determination. I thought he was some sort of demon trying to eat my soul, so I bolted out of there and run for miles until I calmed down and called a taxi. Got drunk the night before a big game. Went home with guy acquaintance. Didn't have sex, but fooled around. Woke up to breakfast, cold water, and Gatorade beside me. Awesome dude.